Well, welcome back to our series Origins, where we're looking at the story of Joseph. Last time we looked at how Joseph had to face adversity. Today we're going to look at how Joseph had to face temptation. So God wanted to use Joseph in a big way, but he had to change him first. As we saw in the last lesson, God gave Joseph a lot of adversity, a lot of pain, a lot of struggle with his brothers, and ultimately God showed Joseph that he needed to depend on God in his life. So let's read on and see what happens next. In Egypt, Joseph was put in charge of Potiphar's house. Genesis 39, 1-4 says, "When Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. This pleased Potiphar, so he soon made Joseph his personal attendant. He put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned." Now Joseph was only a slave when he came into Potiphar's household, but things quickly changed. Potiphar saw how much Joseph trusted God, and because of that, Potiphar decided to put Joseph in charge of his entire household. So instead of a slave, Joseph was now the head butler of his house, in charge of other slaves below him. But things quickly changed for Joseph. By doing the right thing, Joseph lost everything. Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man, and Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. "Come and sleep with me," she demanded, but Joseph refused. "Look," he told her, "my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God." Now Potiphar's wife kept trying to seduce Joseph time and time again, and every single time Joseph said, "No, I won't do it." But on the last time, as she was trying to seduce Joseph, she grabbed a hold of some of his clothes and he ran away, but she had his clothes and she used them to frame him. Genesis 39, 19-20 says, "Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph had treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained." Joseph was only a slave, so his word against Potiphar's wife's word would lose out every time. So he ended up being thrown into prison. So this brings us to our next point. Honoring God doesn't lead to an easy life. Joseph had to learn that following God wasn't easy. Even when Joseph made the right decisions, his life still might be difficult. And the same is true for us. But we're going to look at how Joseph withstood the temptation in his own life. Joseph wasn't a perfect person, but he believed in a perfect God. Genesis 39 verse 9 says, "No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God." Joseph knew that if he gave in to his temptation, he wouldn't just be sinning against Potiphar, he would be sinning against God. Joseph knew the holiness of God, and that's why Joseph was able to overcome his temptation. So you must decide how to handle temptation before it comes to you. Ask yourself this question. Would you give in to temptation if you knew that you wouldn't be caught for whatever it was you were going to do? I'm sure most of us would, right? And that's why it's so important for us to have an action step in dealing with temptation in our lives. So here's the plan. We avoid, think, and flee. So the first of our 3 action steps is to avoid. Don't put yourself in compromising situations. So if you're an alcoholic, you probably don't want to go into a bar where there's a lot of alcohol. The second thing is to think. We need to decide to honor God before the temptation even comes. Because if we do that, when we're being tempted, it's going to be that much easier to say no to temptation. And the last thing we need to do is this: flee, run, get away from the temptation. Just as in Joseph's story, when Potiphar's wife was trying to seduce him, Joseph got up and ran. Sometimes we need to physically remove ourselves from the situation to avoid temptation. So I hope these 3 steps can help you in your battle with temptation.